Almost 1 out of 3 university students fail to find full-time employment within 4 months of their graduation.
Even worse than that, 1 out of 4 younger Australians are not using their university degree in the workplace. As a university lecturer, I find these numbers very confronting. But I also need to play the devil advocate here, because sometimes what I find is that students also have problems to articulate and advocate for their own profession.
And I don't think that that's something that's just unique to health promotion. I mean, I studied a really vague sounding degree, Bachelor of Creative Industries, majoring in media and comms. And I had a lot of trouble, even after I graduated, saying what exactly that meant. My dad, he's old school, he's a mechanic. And he often asked me, what does this mean? What are you going to do? What is your job title going to be after you graduate? And I really struggled to be able to tell him. To be honest, I kind of struggle now.
And I guess it is also up to the student to be a little bit creative about their job opportunities. So, for example, we know that only 15% of jobs are advertised. So there is really a need to potentially be a little bit creative, explore different opportunity, potentially do a little bit of volunteer work to find out really a little bit of a niche, and then connect with the right people.
Absolutely. And our guest today, Margaret, she saw this gap, she saw these stats, and she actually wanted to do something about it. In her own words, her social enterprise was born out of the will and the want to change the world. And in layman's terms, that's really, she saw a gap and she filled it. And with a groundswell of support, that's really how Young Opportunities Australia came into being.
And on top of that, Margaret has some really interesting insight for the social entrepreneurs out there, but also for students and graduates who may be looking for the right opportunities for themselves. Welcome to The Human Factor, the show where we explore social change through the eyes of social entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders. My name is Melanie Roussin, her name is Erin McCabe, and we are your hosts.
Today, we talk to Margaret Quixley, the founder of the social enterprise Young Opportunities Australia.
On today's episode, you'll hear about how Margaret launched the platform Young Opportunities Australia to help young people find purposeful career development opportunity. Let's start the show. Welcome to the show, Margaret. As the founder of a social enterprise, I have no doubt that you wear 1,000 hats. But what I'd like to know is, how would you describe yourself?
Thanks for having me. So that's an interesting and a very open question. I guess I would describe myself as someone who's really self-motivated and ambitious, and looking to find the people and connect them with the opportunities that empower them to change the world. So I guess I'm kind of like exploring the world and trying to help others do the same.
Love it. And so, like many of us in that social change space, Young Opportunities Australia isn't everything that you do or have done. You also have a role at BirdLife Australia. And while they're both socially minded organisation, I would hazard a guess that they're both vastly different. So how do you juggle these two things, your passion project, Young Opportunities Australia, and your day job at BirdLife Australia?
That's a really great question, because I think when I started YOA 2 years ago, my role at BirdLife was really different, and I was actually part-time. So I had just come back from a stint overseas in the US. I came back and was fortunate enough to have my job kept open for me, but I was only 3 days a week then. And there wasn't an opportunity for me to increase my hours at work. So I was looking for ways that I could kind of create my own opportunities to expand my skills, but also I saw a problem that I wanted to fix. And kind of fast forwarding through that period, my role at work has significantly changed. And so that I've had to negotiate throughout that 2-year journey. So I've kind of steadily increased to a full-time now, and I've taken on a lot more responsibilities. So I guess over that 2-year process, my focus has shifted from being really intensely focused on YOA to more intensely focused on my role at BirdLife. But I guess what the common thread, because I'm often asked, how do you, these seem like two really different jobs or, fields of interest, how do you reconcile them? And I guess something that I thought about myself, and the thread that kind of underpins both is a will and a want to make the world better. And as cliche as that sounds, it's really about a deeply held set of values around social, environmental and economic justice. And I see my role across both as being empowering people to take action about the things they care about. So whether it's through connecting people with opportunities at BirdLife, empowering people to, make change in their local community through bird life. That's probably the common thread that I could draw between the two. And as I say, it's been a juggling act between the two over the last 2 years.
Absolutely. And so I understand that Young Opportunities Australia has been driven by yourself, obviously, but also by volunteers. So what roles do volunteers play in the day-to-day running of the organisation?
Yeah, another great question. So probably like something that I've reflected on a lot over the last 2 years, because the first 6 months, I would say, give or take, I went it alone. And that's probably something that I learnt the hard way, was probably not. I should have brought people in earlier, because for a number of reasons, collaboration is always better. You can always achieve more, but also to be able to plan for the future better and the growth, the kind of unexpected growth of YOA during that time. But so I did learn the lesson, and I went out and found people. And so because I'm Melbourne based, I wanted to have a core constituency of volunteers here that could support the different aspects of YOA. So we've had kind of probably between 4 and 6 over that time, who have played different roles, from communications to event and even volunteer management themselves. And then across the country, we kind of tried to establish a network of people, mainly university-based, that could act as local champions in their community to try and connect people with what YOA was doing. So a variety of roles and a variety of different levels of engagement as well. So some were really self-motivated and really driven, and others had to be led a lot more. And so that's something that I'm familiar with in my day job as well, but it certainly presented challenging, and I probably spent a lot more time managing and nourishing those relationships with people than I initially expected. But that was obviously to get a better result. So that was a really great learning experience for me.
We've already mentioned that Young Opportunities Australia is a social enterprise. And I suppose what I'm wondering, Margaret, is how does this work in practice? So in terms of, I know that you have a range of activities and you did like workshops and different things. But what I wonder is, where does the money come from? And I suppose, where does it go?
Yeah, really great question, because I guess the way YOA is a little bit different from probably some of the other guests you've had on the show. I know you've had Suno and a number of other really great social enterprises on your show. Those models, I guess, they were essentially business models that added the social aspect, and kind of, whereas YOA was almost the opposite, and we established as a community essentially to meet a social problem. And the intent was never, certainly to begin with, it was never as a business. It really came afterwards when, again, I kind of experienced that exponential growth and demand, and really hunger of young people to want more and to be a part of it. And I kind of realised, this might actually be a job opportunities. Maybe I should focus a bit more on it, and how could I make this sustainable? So working for BirdLife, I think I kind of experienced many of the pitfalls and challenges of in the not-for-profit space, the chasing of money and the constant instability, and also the, more broadly in the charity sector, it's really difficult to be independent, to be an independent voice for your or an advocate for the people or causes that you represent when you're constrained by funding in that way. So I wanted to take those learnings and find a way to make YOA sustainable. And so that was, again, a long journey, and certainly something that I can't really say that I came to a conclusion on, because over the last 2 years, we really tried different methods, and that involved me going to business coaches, or specifically to social enterprise coaches, to find different ways to make it sustainable and to be able, the vision really for me was about how can we employ people to do this, because I knew that the volunteer group was really a short-term strategy. It was really to get it off the ground, and I was really clear about that from the beginning, with the view to hopefully making it even a part-time paid opportunities for people to subsidise their income, and to make it, obviously there's a mutual investment, and there's a sustainability that comes when people are employed to do a certain job. So both that continuity, I saw the need. So jumping to the business model, again, as I say, we really tried a lot of different methods. So it probably was a few months in before I started really thinking about this, and I was actually proactively approached by my a business partner, so someone that who I met through YOA, and that's Erin Watson-Lynn, who is the founder of Generate Worldwide, approached me and said, "Look, I'm running these study tours. Do you want to work together? And maybe we can, kind of partner up." And she had the expertise in kind of on-ground experience in India, and obviously I had this really hungry, large group of people who wanted to use these and to access these opportunities. So that was just one way. We partnered up and curated these international study tours, which was amazing. But again, we had the problem of scale. Like, how do we, it was really intense on both of our time. And as I say, I was kind of increasing my work at the same time, and there was kind of perennial question that I was facing of, although this is obviously, a small amount of income now, it dawned on me that it wasn't a sustainable option. So, I explored partnering with other organisations, even, dabbled in the idea of a fee-for-service model where, a small fee was paid, like in a way where students or young people became members of YOA to access, and that way we might be able to scale what we were doing, because at that time we had really bootstrapped, like the website was established, created by my friend, and everything we were doing was really just within really limited means. So the way, we were kind of trying to find ways to make the website better and more dynamic and responsive. Maybe we had big dreams of kind of allowing people to create profiles, and, a lot of that required a lot of investment. So the answer to your question, I don't really have one. It was a continual process of trying different and testing and learning from other people and saying maybe we could try this. And I guess the conclusion that I came to was that we had to find something that we could scale, and often that requires substantial investment in both resources and time. And so that's something that I kind of still am grappling with at the moment.
No, it is definitely a journey for, I'm sure, a lot of our listener as well. What I was wondering is, you touched a little bit on partnerships, and, getting into the door of some of the organizations that you have, for example, listed on your website can be a bit of a challenge. I know I've certainly faced these challenges in my career. And what I wonder is, as a young person starting a new venture, tell us about how you actually got through the door of your partner and, for example, convince them of your idea and also its credibility.
So the majority of them actually were quite serendipitous. I'd love to say that I went in and I was able to influence them with my amazing skills, but they were actually through, I guess, unintentional meetings, a lot of them. So I made the very first year, I made a big effort to go out and engage and meet other people in the sector. And that was through, meetups, events, conferences, workshops. I went and really proactively networked and shared the idea. And that was as much about testing the idea. Was it actually credible? Was it something that people were prepared to be a part of? Were they inspired by it? Were they prepared to pay for it? So through those meetings and, I guess, common grounding in those conversations, people kind of started coming to YOA. So, came to me with ideas themselves of how they think we might be able to partner. And as it grew, again, people reached out to us and said, we want to work with you. But it's definitely something that we could have been more proactive in. And I think that it's really, only now 2 years down that certainly that the bigger organisations are taking notice of YOA. And in many cases, we weren't even positioned to offer what they wanted. So we hadn't even, people would come to us and say, can you do X, Y, Z, help us co-create some content or develop a workshop? And we kind of did it on the fly. So, but I think that if I was going to give advice about engaging, I think that's where we found real success, was being the places where other founders, other industry people are. There was an women in entrepreneurship dinner I went to where I was sitting next to someone from Google who expressed a lot of interest in what we were doing. So I think those interactions were probably more fruitful than coming in cold. And those people, even if they weren't the right people in the organisation, could often link you with someone else or provide you a warm introduction. And that was obviously always more fruitful than just, coming in cold.
Absolutely. It's always the simple things that actually make the biggest difference. I think sometimes people are always looking for like the magic fix, but then you just go, no, you just have to talk to people.
Yeah, and not be scared to as well. I think that sometimes you feel like, oh, I've got to send this introduction and like this email and how it's, and I feel like just picking up the phone and asking people, or, if you're following someone online whose work you're really inspired by, 9 times out of 10, actually, I often talk to young people about how to reach out to these people that they might be intimidated by, or that they really would love to get in touch with. And often, if you invest time in finding out who they are, where they're coming from, and from a really genuine place, kind of connect with them or pick up the phone and reach out. More often than not, they'll say, oh, sure, let's grab a cup of coffee. So I think, just not being scared to kind of use your voice and be a bit brave.
Absolutely. That's even been a learning for Mel and I starting this podcast even. So from the outside looking in, like not knowing anything that, Young Opportunities Australia is a social enterprise or anything, it does seem like it's a simple job posting website that's designed for young people. However, what I'm wondering is, what are the true realities of actually running the organisation? What doors has Young Opportunities Australia opened up in terms of the issues that students face that you probably didn't expect?
Yeah, so it was interesting, as it kind of touched on earlier. I think when I initially started it, it was really in response to a problem that I saw was kind of threefold. And that being that there was a lot of young people. I had just graduated. I knew a lot of young people who had just graduated and were feeling really disillusioned. And simultaneously, there was a lot of opportunities that were out there that weren't getting the reach that they needed. So people weren't connecting with what was out there. And then the third thing really was about the messaging that was happening in the policy context about young people. And so YOA was really started to connect, obviously, young people with opportunities, but it also quickly became a bit of an advocacy and a voice for like an advocacy opportunity for young people. There was a Senate inquiry into the changes to Centrelink, which were proposed in 2014, which we responded to. We kind of went out and asked people to give anecdotal evidence, and we included that in our submission. And then we was asked to front up to the Senate inquiry. So that was really unexpected. But I think a really great learning opportunity. So I would probably say that advocacy and that connection, not only of young people with opportunities, but with each other, and the sense of creating a community where people didn't feel alone, where they understood that everyone was in the same boat, everyone was experiencing the same things, because it's not something that friends often share with each other. One thing that we found quite surprising was that while we had a lot of engagement when we were posting opportunities, people really rarely liked or shared them, because they're almost like they were conscious that their networks would see them, and maybe, there was this kind of competition space. And so rather than necessarily, we could see they were engaging with the content, but online, but unlikely to share it. So yeah, I think that it's a challenging one to talk to your friends about that you're going through, particularly when they're going through it as well. Maybe they're not, you don't really necessarily are that open about it. So yeah, there was a few unexpected twists and turns that happened along the way.
Do you think it might have had something to do with the fact that young people, they want to be seen as successful? So by admitting that they don't know what to do next to their friends, they're sort of admitting that they're kind of lost?
Yeah, that's like, certainly I think from my experience, I felt like that too. Like you can plan for the future, particularly when I graduated from my undergrad and I had a really clear idea of what I wanted to do, and that didn't work out. And so that, again, was another motivator for me starting YOA, because I knew that, depression and anxiety around, having you kind of aspiring to graduate to kind of tick the box, and then you realise there's all these other obstacles that no one really told you about. But certainly I think, particularly, in the online world where all you're being filtered is all the great experiences of people travelling overseas and doing all these amazing things, and it's really easy to feel like you're being left behind and you don't know what's going on. But I guess the biggest thing that we were really trying to dispel that myth and connect people with real stories through the blog and also, I guess, instill a sense of hope and confidence in them that, oh, this person who sounds like me is completely like me, is going through the same experience as I did, and this is where they kind of ended up. This is how they got through, or they applied for this opportunity that I would never consider myself for myself, but maybe I will now. So it was kind of changing the horizons for people.
You've touched on the role of government, and I'm quite interested in that. I come from I teach health promotion, so we talk a lot about advocacy and obviously the role of government with some of the initiatives that we do. And obviously, Young Opportunities Australia, to me, seems like such a good fit for government funding and involvement. And you've touched on what happened for you in 2014. But I suppose what I wonder is, how do you see the role of government in the future of Young Opportunity Australia?
So I never really went after government funding per se. I think there's definitely a common goal and a common problem that we're trying to solve. It's an interesting one. I think that we could have done better in reaching out and making ourselves known and maybe making those connections. I guess I was more focused on business and education providers and other social enterprises, kind of connecting in those spaces. And so I probably wasn't as proactive as I could have been in the government sector. I guess I look more to business and young people themselves to solve many of the problems. Of course, we have to have the right policy conditions, and the discourse is probably the biggest thing that the government can influence and that can set the tone for young people. So certainly in 2014, that was a really negative discourse about young people being lazy and, a real disconnect between what people are actually experiencing and the drivers of unemployment and what the government was pitching as a problem of, they weren't really recognising that the shortage of jobs themselves or the oversupply of graduates and the competition that young people were experiencing. So I think that's where a really strong role that we could play in making sure that, we keep governments honest and that they understand the implications of the policy and the discourse on young people, because it was certainly significant for the young people that I interacted with.
It does seem like such a good fit for the government such a good organization for the government to be supporting. I mean, employment for young people. It would certainly make them look good, wouldn't it? You would think.
So you've touched on the fact that you did events and study tours overseas. So what's next for Young Opportunities Australia? Where do you see the future of the organisation?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think after 2 years, we established in May 2014, so almost 3 years now, actually. Yeah, so the first 2 years was really gung-ho. As I say, we had a really great core group of volunteers. We were hot desking out of the Foundation for Young Australians, so we were really supported. But I guess I experienced something that probably a lot of people experience, and I wasn't really proactive in setting up contingency plans, and that was burnout. As I took up a full-time role with BirdLife, my focus shifted, and of course the core group of volunteers who were at that time students themselves, they went on to take up full-time jobs themselves, and naturally, and I didn't have contingency plans in place to kind of shepherd YOA through the next steps. So the last kind of certainly 3 or 4 months, it's really been on a bit of a hiatus and kind of just treading water. The community's still there. We still have sporadic opportunities posted, but it's certainly not systematic in the way that we previously had done. And I guess I'm in the process of regrouping and figuring out what the next steps look like. And for me, that's really about finding the next group of people who can take this forward. I think there's lots of opportunities to make it sustainable. There is a lot of investment required, particularly in terms of time, that probably I can't offer at this point. But being honest with myself, it's something that I certainly don't want to see let go of, because I know the power that it's had in many young people's lives. They've reached out to me and told me, and there's probably many more who haven't, in just feeling like they're not alone. There's always something around the corner, even if they're, been rejected 100 times since graduating, that there's something else that's waiting out there for them. And kind of keeping that hopeful attitude has been really powerful for a lot of people. So yeah, I think that, yeah, over the next few months, I'll be reaching out to try and find who can take this forward and how I can support them. I think it's something that I'd always like to be involved in, but yeah, just conscious that it's probably something I don't have capacity to really lead at the moment. So it's an open question, and certainly if any of the listeners have any ideas, I'd love to hear from them.
I think it's something that's not often talked about. It's you. The story is always like the founder just charging through and you know, that sort of thing. But it's a very real part of making change is that burnout and those contingencies. And it's a difficult thing to recognize and talk about, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Particularly when, you know, of course, I met a lot of people through that lens of YOA. And so, you know, there's a sense of letting people down as well. Like not only the people who were involved in the community and benefited from it, but certainly others in the space who, you know, told me that, oh, you know, what you're doing is really great. And yeah, it's certainly something that's challenging and difficult to grapple with, as you say, because admitting that something you can't really take forward is a big thing. And it's taken me a long time to realise that that's the case. And I mean, I've learnt so much from that process. I think that while YOA was obviously about servicing the community, building a community for young people, it was as much a learning opportunity for me, and it was really a confidence builder for myself as well. Like I think that's probably the biggest thing, is regardless of whether it worked out or, you know, became a viable enterprise or not, it was really about giving it a go, seeing, you know, I mean, I would never have dreamed of leading a leadership program to India, let alone two. And, you know, I was able to, be exposed to networks of people and opportunities and skills myself that I think I never would have previously if I had just stuck to the day job. So I think there's certainly no regret.
What we always ask our guests is if you could leave everyone that's listening with a few words that they'll really take to heart today, what would it be? And it can be absolutely anything you want. It doesn't have to be, you know, some inspirational quote. It can be absolutely anything that you would like to leave with our listeners.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing would be to just start. So if people are thinking, how do I start? Where do I go? What do I do? I think it sounds really like a bit of a cop-out, but I think that was the biggest thing. I didn't plan for this. It was really just like, I'm going to start a Facebook page. That's literally how it started and just snowballed out of this world. But I think the other thing is, because I didn't have any expectations, you know, I was able to give it a go. So I think always checking in and reaching out to others. So testing is a really important, even if it's just a small group of people that you trust, or, you know, even going to those networking events that I was kind of talking about and testing it with people you don't know. Maybe you're kind of feeling shy to share it with your family or friends. Testing it with people you don't know is a really great way of kind of getting a reality check, and people will ask questions that challenge you, and that's really great. And I think not being afraid of, I hate using the word failure, but as I've kind of shared today, I think that although YOA is in a bit of a holding pattern at the moment and we've really got to regroup and figure out where it's going, you know, there's so many lessons to be learned. It really is about the journey. It's not about the destination. And so just give it a go and know that it's you know, you're going to get a lot out of it even if it doesn't work out. So that's totally fine as well.
That's a great message to be leaving our listener with today, Margaret. And I guess as you're talking about the future of the organization and reaching out to people, if people want to reach out to you, what is the best way that they can connect with you? But also, what is the best way that they can support you and your work at the moment?
So probably the best way to reach out is through email. So you can send me an email, hello@youngopportunities.org, and I'll do my best to get back in touch with you. And probably the best way at the moment in terms of support would be, I mean, I'd love to hear from people who are interested or who know people who might be interested in kind of YOA 2.0 and taking it to the next step. And that's where I'm really going to be focused the next 2 or 3 months, is how do we keep this great project going, even if it becomes, you know, a not-for-profit or transitions into another stage. I'd love to hear from people who have any ideas about that.
And I guess that can be in terms of financial support or manpower or something like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for taking the time to talk to us today.
No problem. Thanks very much for having me.
So every morning, and this is a really bad habit that I'm going to admit to, I lie in bed and I scroll through my Instagram. I just scroll, and I'll say it, I'm really mindlessly scrolling. And there's things that always stand out to me are the people who are maybe, showing off a post that's actually really real. It's not this perfectly proportioned and captured and filtered photo. It's a very real post, sometimes talking about things that haven't gone wrong. And the reason why they stand out to me is because it's showing off their human factor. Hey, the name of the podcast. And I must say, that's something that I so appreciated about our discussion today with Margaret, is about her frankness and her honesty about being human, and sometimes the, for lack of a better term, failures that we experience.
Very much so. And I think for all the social entrepreneurs out there, you might relate to that. I know I certainly did. And I still am struggling with that. It's coming from a place as well that when Margaret was talking about her business model, she didn't go about it in a business way where, she's building a business that has a clear purpose and then using that money to fund a cause. She's actually set up this business model in relations to a community. So it was set up as a community. And then she went and explored and tested different type of income stream and models. But I think that can create a fatigue, and it's difficult when you don't have all these answers and you actually don't know what you're looking for. And you might come at a stage where you get a little bit stuck, for lack of a better term, where you don't know whether you should keep moving forward or you should step back.
Yeah, it's like the point of no return. At what point, like in events, you get to a point where you're working. And if something occurs, you get to a point where you go, well, at this stage, I have to make the call whether we go ahead or we pull the plug, whether it's because of lack of attendees or no sponsors or something like that. You have a deadline where you go, I can't turn back.
And there is this saying, you have to cut your losses. So you don't know if you are on a downward slope or an upward slope. So whether the struggle that you're experiencing is a normal part of the process or whether you are heading towards failure.
Exactly. And I think one of the reasons why people don't know whether what they're experiencing is normal or not is because people don't talk about it. Because there's this notion in the world that the inspiring stories are those of success only, when in actual fact, everyone experiences a downward slope.
Yes.
Everyone, and it's the same in business, doesn't it say that you always have a slump after the initial climb? So it should be a normal part of our rhetoric and discussion, but it's not. It's almost like taboo. We don't talk about it.
And I think it is reinforced by the fact that you also have a day job.
Yes.
So I think there's a difference when, some people are working on their business full time and obviously have the right financial support to do so, or when you're doing that at the end of your day, when everything else is happening in your day job. And then you wonder, at what stage do you dedicate your full attention to your project? Are you able to support yourself and support your project if you do so? And it's all that internal turmoil that you have about where to take things next.
The Goody Bag. Okay, for this month's Goody Bag, I'm not putting in a person or a business. I'm putting in an entire concept, and that's the concept of secondhand fashion. And the reason why I want to put that in is because anyone who knows me personally knows that I wear most of my clothes from op shops, and I do that because I'm a poor bee. But I'm also conscious about, fashion waste and fast fashion. And op shops are a really sustainable way to help contribute to reducing garbage waste in the world. So op shopping is undergoing a little bit of a brand revolution thanks to social media. It was once seen as something that, only old people or people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds could do. But now there's people who are out there really revolutionizing what op shopping is, and it's really, really awesome. So I wanted to give a shout out to some of my favorite people who are doing awesome stuff in secondhand fashion. The first one is a girl from Brisbane, where we're from, called Never Pay Retail. She actually tags all of the name brands that she purchases and then says how much she actually paid for it in the op shop, which I can just imagine the person from social media manager of that account being like, ugh. The other person is a lady from New York called Trash is for Tossers, and she's trying to live a zero waste lifestyle, which is something I don't super aspire to, but I probably would never get to. And then the last one is a girl I've just started following. She has really amazingly bright and beautiful fashion, and her name is The Only Way Is Op. So if you've ever been scared of going into an op shop, I would really, really recommend that you check them out. Get over your fear and go in an op shop and buy some secondhand clothes.
I love that. And since we're talking about environment, and by the way, we had no idea that the other person was going to talk about the environment. I want to talk about reducing plastic waste, because I'm quite shocked that apparently enough plastic is thrown away each year to circle the earth 4 times. That really scares me. And especially considering that I'm Canadian, we recycle everything. And in my building, there's no recycling bin. So I want to do what I can to try to reduce my waste. And there's this lady from Byron Bay, a little town in Australia where we are. She's a mother of 5 kids, and she was looking for a way to reduce waste for her family. And she was thinking about the way that people used to store food before they use plastic. And she came up with this reusable bee wax wrap. And she named her company Honeybee Wax. And so you can find them at honeybeewrap.com.au. And basically, it's all ingredients in it, 100% organic. And it's safe, it's non-toxic, it's eco-friendly, and it's compostable. And basically how it works is it's whatever you would be using cling wrap for, you basically can replace it with this beeswax. The only problem is just maybe with the meat. So you might want to be careful with meat item, but you can wrap pretty much anything like cheese, sandwich, veggies, anything that you would use cling wrap for usually. And she's based in Byron Bay, but she ships worldwide. So no excuse to be using so much plastic anymore.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please head to iTunes and rate us, or head over to our Facebook page, The Human Factor, hit like and join in the conversation. Tell us what you thought about our episode, and if you had any thoughts or insights to add to anything Margaret said today, please leave us a comment. Have you ever been inspired to make change in your own community? Please just say hello.
Or you can tweet us at _The Human Factor, or visit the website humanfactor.com.au and leave us a voicemail or message. This show is just one part of a community that wants to affect and grow social change. So if you have a topic or a person that you would like us to feature on the show, please let us know.
You're all awesome, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, it's Erin here. I just wanted to put in a plug for our Patreon campaign, which is your chance to give up just one coffee a month. I'm talking like $3 here, and make a donation to our Patreon campaign, which would cover the cost of producing the podcast for us, which would allow us to free up our brain space of worrying about the cost of producing the podcast for you, and actually allow us to think about awesome guests and awesome new topics to cover on The Human Factor. So if you'd like to become one of our change makers and join us by supporting us on our Patreon campaign, go to patreon.com/thehumanfactor and follow the prompts to become one of our change makers.